Hey guys, it's Tiffany, and welcome to Hack and Splash Page. For this first episode, I'm going to be talking about Bitch Planet, which was something I had interest in as soon as I heard the title. Let's be honest, I didn't even know anything about it, but I was like, Bitch Planet, I'm going to read that. It's written by Kelly Sue DeConnick, who has written several other titles, often featuring a female cast because she does it really well. She writes for women really well, which I'll get into when I get into the writing. And the art's by, I'm looking down here by the way because I don't actually have the physical issue, which I hate. I have it digitally. So I'm going to be looking at it occasionally on here, but the art and the covers are by Valentine DeLandro, without me trying to spoil anything, because I'd rather have you guys go out and pick this up for yourself. It's clearly a alternate future Earth kind of thing. I can't even say it's alternate, because who the hell knows, I guess. What I dig about it though is they don't tell you when it is, it's just Earth. And based on images you see, you can determine that this is some sort of future of it. But then I'll tell you a date, which it helps to not inevitably date this book, which is brilliant on their part, in my opinion. We've got space travel. There's some sort of, there's one panel where we see some sort of like RoboCop-esque, or even Dredd-esque, you know, police floaty vehicle thing. So I'm getting future from that, personally. And in this future, we have a society where men are in power, and they have, I describe this society honestly as like an Orwellian Stepford Wives, where there is a certain idea that women should conform to, and when they don't, they are deemed non-compliant, and that sets you up to, if you continue to act in such a way, to be exiled from the planet. And when you're exiled, you head off to a facility which is nicknamed Bitch Planet. I'm just going to say Bitch Planet, by the way, as much as I can, because how often do you get to say a phrase like Bitch Planet? When we get to the facility, we see these women prisoners being processed and kind of start to get an idea of the climate that they'll face there. Not only is there this societal idea of what a woman should be like, but then when we take these women who don't conform to the societal norms and put them onto Bitch Planet, how they will be even further exploited there to some degree. So, you know, that's kind of the overall summary without me ruining anything, because there's some really great twists and turns, which actually transitions me right into the writing. DeConnick is a really excellent writer. I do want to focus on her ability to write for women, but I don't want to make it out to be that she can't write for anyone, because she can. And that's actually part of what makes her such a great writer, is when you're reading her female characters, I don't feel like I'm reading a stereotypical female character that you'll see in books, comics, manga, that whole, you know, scenario where even other women writers will do this, where it's like, well, I feel like women talk a certain way and they talk about certain things and I better put that in, because otherwise how will they know that it's a woman's dialogue? DeConnick's these are just people. They're just people. Like, and I like that so much, because it's just people and they're just talking, and it's more about the spirit of the character and the personality of the character than the overall gender of the character, which I think is awesome. She also does a really good job of throwing you curveballs. Now, I know that there's one curveball that I read that some people had not foreseen, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of saw it coming, but like, I don't think that's bad at all. It was just like, I got this inkling about it. I don't want to say it because I want you to read it, so I'm not going to tell you what it was. But there's a whole different curveball that was in there that caught me completely off guard, and I legitimately exclaimed. Like, her writing is just great. It's really great, and it's really well paired with Valentine's art, or DeLandro's art. The name Valentine is really cool, so I can't help but want to say it, but it's DeLandro's art. He does the art and the coloring, so there's a really great harmony to it. And I know that the overall story, based on some interviews that I read with DeConnick, is based off of, you know, 60s, 70s grindhouse films. And when you look at the cover to this book, it's like, you're like, yeah, obviously. And the art on the interiors, of course, matches the cover to some degree, which I love that, because I pick up books based on the cover, and sometimes I'm really disappointed by the interiors of the art. But this art's really good, and it fits the story really well. I'm usually hesitant to use the word visceral, because, you know, it has some negative connotations, and most people don't, I don't know, necessarily understand like the impact of that word, and I don't want to use it in the sense of it being like unintelligent, but like there's just this kind of raw emotion to the art, and there's this like the deep dark shadows, like those heavy black shadows, and just the use of his line, because in the beginning you see these women, like these prisoners, nude, and I shouldn't even call it nude because there's a really big difference between nude and naked. These women are naked, but the way that they're drawn, like, you know, depending on the type of character that it is, even if it's a character we're never going to get to know, in the art style you get a sense of that person's spirit. And some of the women, like, you can sense the power just in his line work, in the way that he draws them, and it's really awesome. Like, that kind of thing, really, I'm like, ooh, that's cool. He also carries through, like, that, like, kind of halftone dot pattern throughout the book, which, to me, lends itself to that whole grindhouse idea, you know, the grindhouse being, like, the really cheaply made movies back in the day, that film houses would, like, string together so that you paid, like, a lower ticket price to go and see them, and they weren't probably the best. Now, let's take away that negative connotation of it being not the best or cheaply made, and that's really cool that they integrated that. It also gives you that kind of retro feel to it, but like his color style and even just using digital in and of itself brings it into a modern age. So that's really cool. You know, so overall, like, I think the book is fun, and I'm really looking forward to reading more about it. But before I wrap this up, and I want to talk about the other stuff first, because there may not be people who are interested in this part. So, before we wrap this up, I do want to just touch on the fact that there are some feminist undertones to this book. It's important, I think, just to make sure that we're all on the same page about when I say the word feminist, that we're just simply talking about really the dictionary definition of it, which is just equality. You know, like, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, that kind of thing. Like, equal pay, equal rights. That's it. That's all we're talking about here, okay? That's the textbook definition, and that's what we're going to go by here. The fact that there are feminist undertones in this, and it's paired with this grindhouse idea, which often featured exploitation type films, whether that was like violence or a race exploitation or, you know, sexploitation, is really interesting to me. Many of the women, or any of the characters, but many of the female characters in this are women of color. And of course you're dealing with this fairly misogynistic society. And then to pair it with something that's associated with exploiting those things is really an interesting coupling to me. I really feel like it's taking the best ideas of those styles of movies and putting them together. And instead, the exploitation is going to come in the form of the story. Like, there's going to be an exploitive part of the story. So it's like this meta sort of grindhouse film. It's interesting. But they really do make a point to show these non-compliant women who are of different races, different sizes, different body types, and they're not what this society would consider perfect by any means. And they compare them to this hologram that is in the facility, Bitch Planet, who is this huge-breasted, fairly tall, little tiny waist, huge-hipped, Barbie pink colored. She's like a Walmart greeter. Like, she greets you when you get there, but she's everywhere, and they have all different versions of her, and they can play all different messages that are read, and like, it's almost like saying, like, no, but this is what we wanted you to be, and you failed miserably. Like, we wanted you to be like this, with the pink and the perfect proportions, and if you're not like that, then you're worthless. And we want to remind you of that every day. And it's interesting, too, because when you see the hologram and the way she's drawn, especially in the face, it's really jarring, because it's not really very attractive, which is interesting in and of itself. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I think that's really cool. Because the fact of the matter is, like, there's nothing wrong with any of these body types. Like, if you are that, if you naturally are like that, like, that's fine. If you have a gorgeous hourglass figure, cool. The problem with this society is that they're saying that's the only thing that is cool. And there are other women who live on Earth, and they, again, they strike me as this Stepford, like, style woman who's just like, hello, yep, there we go, everything's great, and everything's fine, and whatever you say goes, and that's it. And right now, it doesn't feel to me like they're beating you over the head with it. It's there, it's clearly present, but nobody is really just being like, feminism, There's a story there. There's a whole story about this whole, like, the facility. They've got stories going on at home about how the rules of that society works. There's this other, like, developing story that I don't want to get into, but that focuses on that exploitative part of it. And then, like, our protagonist, in and of itself, there's a whole shroud of mystery there. And none of that necessarily has to do with direct feminism, but it could. And to pair it with this really interesting, cool, futuristic story, I think is a really great way to present these types of ideas and for me, it just elevates it to that next level where people can get into some really good conversations about it. And I really can't wait to get my hands on the next one. Which I did read also that every third issue of this story will be done by a different artist and will focus on one of the prisoners there and how they got there in their story. Which to me even gives you a greater connection to these characters and hopefully helps you to understand who they are and lets her develop and lets DeConnick and Delandro actually develop these characters further without needing to like take the story to a grinding halt like in the actual story itself. So I don't know. I think it's really cool. Make sure too, if you get this, like, you know what? If feminism isn't your thing and you don't really care about it, that's fine. Pick it up anyway. It's still a space story. And, like, it's still just about really strong characters who happen to be women. Whatever. Pick it up. Give it a shot. It's, like, beautifully written. And, you know what? If you want to know more about the feminism thing, there's a really cool article in the back by Henderson where she discusses a little bit about what's going on in the comic when it comes to the feminist thing. And it's not beat over the head. It's just an explanation. It's just there if you want to read it. Go for it. There's also some really cool art in the back. And on the back, as a bonus, they created one of those really cool retro ad pages on the back, but it all has to do with the world that Bitch Planet takes place in. So it's another world building tactic right on the back of your comic. So I would recommend it. You know, I'd love to know what you guys think about it. How do you feel about a futuristic Earth that we don't know when it is? How do you feel about this idea of a prison, like, kind of planet thing where we send people away in the future because they don't comply? You know, was there anything in the book that if you read it that surprised you? If you do that, put spoilers in front of it so people don't read it necessarily. And I guess my last question is, like, do you think that knowing that there are feminist undertones to this book would deter or encourage you to read it? Like, let me know, because I'm interested in that, but let's try to be, you know, cool about it with each other. This is a touchy topic sometimes, so let's just keep it chill, see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed this kind of new show, and if you did, then there'll be more. And if you didn't, then this is it. So, thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you next time on Hack and Splash Page. Bye!
What if the kid landed in another country?
Well, they do that. There used to be a label for DC books called Elseworlds, where they were like, it was basically their equivalent of What If from Marvel. But they did it better. Because Marvel's What Ifs were more like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And like, it was always like a darker take or a more like ridiculous take. It was like a breeding ground for potential artists and writers. They were like, well, we don't trust you to draw Captain America, but like you could draw What If Captain America had been unfrozen, you know, in 1994. You know, so you could draw that, and we'll see if you can do it.
Okay.
Elseworlds was like, let's do a really cool story about this. Like, what if Superman's rocket landed in Russia, like, during World War One?
That's pretty cool.
And that's called Superman Red Sun, and it's pretty cool. And it's basically like the DC universe from the Soviet Union's perspective. Like, that idea is definitely played with throughout DC's history. There's one where, like, what if Superman's pod landed in Gotham City, and a kindly couple named Thomas and Martha Wayne found it?
Oh, you remember you saying something about that?
DeMatteis wrote it.
Oh!
We interviewed DeMatteis, Baltimore Comic-Con link right here. You can see that whole interview. It's pretty great. Anyway,
what if Superman landed in the South during the Civil War?
Yeah.
What if he landed in Canada?
Yeah.
He'd be really friendly.
There's another one.
He'd be super friendly.
Super friendly man.
Who doesn't fight when there's a hockey game?
No.
Like,
oh!
I can't help you.
Sorry. There's another one where he lands in...
you know what, this fighting's all about.
He lands in England, and it's called Superman True Brit, but it's like written by John Cleese, and it's dumb.
What?
It's awful. I thought it'd be really cool and funny, and it's not.
That's...
John Cleese wrote a comic?
Yeah. It's pretty weak.
Ben's gonna look that up.
Yeah, check it out.
I don't know if I want to.